So we gather together for worship on this Christmas Eve, and Christmas Eve is full of all kinds of thoughts and feelings and wonderings, often having to do with the past, often having to do with Christmases that have preceded our celebration tonight and our celebration fully of the birth of Jesus tomorrow. It's become, I guess, a bit of a tradition at Epiphany on Christmas Eve to take a walk back into the past, to walk down memory lane, to engage in some nostalgia, and to kind of enjoy some memories that might emerge based upon some images that I'll be showing on the screens in just a couple of moments. What I hope you'll do if you recognize what you see on the screen is to go ahead and call it out, to say, yeah, I recognize that. I know what that is. So we'll spend a little time in nostalgia, a sentimental yearning for the happiness of a former place or time, which is often how we think about the past, at least on the face of it, at least on the surface of it. And so we'll engage in a bit of nostalgia so you can help me along based upon what you see showing up on the screen. So what is this? Frosty the Snowman. Okay, that's pretty easy. White Christmas, that's another easy. That's a softball, okay. Polar Express, yeah, that's a new one this year. People have been on that. That's a wonderful movie that came out 2004, I think it was, maybe. Rudolph, of course, everybody knows that. Christmas Carol, that's right. That is an awful looking nose, but I kind of thought it was a good image of Ebenezer. The Grinch, all right. Christmas Story, that's classic, isn't it? That is absolutely vintage. Charlie Brown, okay. Miracle on 34th Street, even in black and white. Well done. That was a newbie this year, okay. Home Alone, yeah, who could forget that one? It's a Wonderful Life. Yeah, It's a Wonderful Life. Billy Joel is an old white guy who has been a singer and an entertainer for a long time. And some of you remember being young when Billy Joel was really all that. I was young then, a long time ago, when I was turned on by Billy Joel's music. He has a song called Keeping the Faith. One of the lyrics in that song is, you know, the good old days weren't always good. And so we see these images of Christmases past, and we look to our past, and we perhaps idealize it, and then Billy Joel and others come along and say, you know, the good old days, they weren't always good. There was always more to them, perhaps, than we might want to remember. There are layers of memory, some of those memories good, others not so good. You know, the good old days weren't always good, and if we pause for just a moment, we know that's true. We know that the past wasn't always wonderful every single moment, so we know that the good old days weren't always good, but we wonder how we can get out of the good old days that weren't always good to a future that has hope for us. Sometimes when we look back to our personal and collective pasts, it's not all good. And sometimes when we look back to the past and we think about what really happened, some of the time at least, we carry this kind of burden about the past, and we don't quite know how to let go of it, but we know that we carry it, and we know that the past comes with us, and the good old days that weren't always good sometimes come to the present, and we wonder, how can we find a hopeful future? And so we carry these burdens. You know what I'm talking about. We all do, to some extent, when we go back to the future, or back to the past. Back to the Future is a movie, and so, but we carry that with us. And that's the reality of human experience. So we stand on the verge of 2020 vision. Already the cliches are more than we can imagine, but we look forward to 2020 because it's a new year. And we hope maybe that 2020 might be a better year than 2019 was, or 2015 or 2012 because we know the good old days aren't always good. We know they weren't always good, and so we look forward and we do this. Now, sometimes we do it half-kiddingly, but sometimes we sit down and we write down these resolutions because we want the future to be different. We want to have some kind of hope for the future, and so we say, okay, we're going to focus on this. We're going to look forward because we know the good old days weren't always good, and we have hope for a different future, and so we launch into 2020 hoping that somehow something will be different. We look at our mistakes from the good old days that weren't always good. We look at our mistakes from the past and we want to erase them, but we don't quite know how. We'd like to, but we don't quite know how we might erase them. And so we carry them with us, and we want to believe and hope that there can be a better future than what we experienced in our past. We have regrets. All of us have some kind of regrets about the past. We have these things that go through our minds, these regrets that go through our hearts, because the good old days weren't always good. And so we have these regrets, and yet we want to move past them. We want to have hope for a better future. And we wonder how we can get that even as we feel trapped. If they only knew about my past, they wouldn't like me. If they only knew about my past, they'd reject me. If they only knew about my past, you can fill in the blank, because we know the good old days weren't always good, and we yearn for a future hope that will be better than what we know, but we don't know how to get there. And so we have a situation where we become the worst enemy we could ever meet. The worst enemy you can ever meet will be yourself, said Nietzsche. Hardly a godly guy, but I think there's something to this. What he is saying is that we are our own worst enemies. Now, if they only knew, they wouldn't like me. Now, I'm not sure about my past, and we are our own worst enemies, and we tell these lies about ourselves to ourselves. But we want a better future. We want a hopeful future, but we don't know how to get there. Rob Bell, one of my favorite theologians and thinkers, says this: you know about head games. Think about the head games. Those voices in your head questioning who you are and what you're doing, telling you you're no good. You ever hear that voice? That's the tempter, trying to get you to believe lies about who you are. You're no good. If they only knew, the good old days weren't always good, and if you knew about my good old days. So we get stuck believing that we're no good, but we desperately want a better future, and we just don't know how to get there. So we find ourselves, we're ashamed of where we've been. It's self-inflicted, or we feel embarrassed or guilty, and we want to get past it, but we're stuck. We want a better future, but we don't know how to get there. So you have a hostage situation. We're held hostage by all of these messages that we tell ourselves about ourselves. Or maybe that people who supposedly love us tell us about ourselves. Parents tell children these things. Spouses tell spouses these things. Even friends and colleagues and coworkers tell people these things, and we end up being held hostage by lies about ourselves. We look back to the past, which we know wasn't always good, and we want to get through it, but we don't know how to get to a better future. Have anybody ever told you that you're unforgivable? You tell yourself you're unforgivable? Do you think your past is unforgivable? That's a lie. You are forgivable. That's the truth. You think you're unlovable because of something you did, something you said, because of a relationship that got broken, because of whatever it is that you think makes you unworthy of being loved? That's a lie. You are lovable. You are forgivable. You are lovable. And then somebody will say to you, you're useless. Maybe you feel that way. because of your past or because of what's going on now. It's another one of those lies that we feed ourselves and sadly that we visit upon other people. But you are forgivable. You are lovable. Your life is worth purpose for today and for the future. We want a better future, but we don't know how to get there. If you're familiar with Alcoholics Anonymous, you know that folks who are part of AA have a disease. It's called alcoholism. Or maybe it's an addiction to another drug like cocaine, crack, some other kind of narcotic. My brother, who was here at 4 o'clock, spends a lot of time in AA and has lived with a lot of regret about his past, but it's getting healed because people there are speaking words of grace and wanting a better future for my brother and for each other. You know what it is. Easy does it one day at a time. And maybe that has something to do with a better future, with God leading the way and saying, your past is forgiven. I have forgotten your past. You want a better future? I will show you a better future if only you will tune in to what I'm trying to say to you and do for you. Here's a prayer. Dear past, thank you for your lessons. Dear future, I'm ready. Dear God, thank you for another chance. All of us want another chance. We talked about this a couple weeks ago, and there was a guy who came out and said, Pastor, I don't need a second chance. I need a third and a fourth and a fifth and a sixth and a seventh chance. You get the point. He said, I've made a lot of mistakes, but I'm grateful that God creates a new and a better future because of grace, because of what God is doing. You are lovable, you are forgivable, and your life has purpose, and God is trying to lead us into that better future. So here we are on Christmas Eve. The word Emmanuel, God with us, means that God has stepped into our shoes. God has stepped into our lives. God has stepped into our place as people, and in doing that, God has said, this is the future. This is your better future. This is the truth about your future, and you find it in my Son, Jesus, born to you, fully vulnerable, fully loving, understanding what it means for you to hurt because he hurts. This is your future, and it is a hopeful future. Jesus forgives the past. He forgives it. Jesus promises to lead us in the present, and he goes ahead of us to create the best, most beautiful, life-giving future we can ever imagine, and that's why we gather tonight. The past, the present, and the future are all in the hands of Jesus, and we are in good hands when we are in his hands. Here at Epiphany, we like to say that all are welcome. All are welcome, and all means all. That's a vision we have. We haven't gotten there yet, but a big vision will probably never be fully reached, and so we dare to put it out there. All are welcome, all means all. If you are straight, if you are gay, if you are male, if you are female, if you are married, if you are single, if you are divorced, if you are young, if you are old, if you are African American, if you are Middle Eastern, if you are Asian, if you are Caucasian, all are welcome, and all means all. And we believe that that is how wide God's embrace for the world is because of Jesus. So if you're looking for a community of faith that has this value at the center of its mission and ministry, come to Epiphany Lutheran Church. This is a special place, not perfect, but it's a special place. And I want to invite you on behalf of the congregation to become a part of a community. If you think that this vision for you has some traction, you might come and discover that Jesus is here in some wonderful ways and that you are welcome. Thank you for being here tonight. Thank you for honoring us with your presence. Please know, always, you are forgivable, you are lovable, your word and your life have purpose. And when we say all means all, that means you. So Merry Christmas in the name of Jesus. Amen.